but the character changed when they cooperated or co-opted a high official in Havana, and the opportunity for an assassination of Castro and a coup presented itself. So this developed along the line, and at that point the second invasion became more of a backup type of idea. John Kennedy, in his settlement with Premier Khrushchev, the Soviet Union, the missile crisis in October of 1962, had agreed that there would be no U.S. involvement in any type of adverse actions against Cuba. That was part of the agreement. So this had to be kept from the Soviet Union, it had to be kept from the F.B.I., it had to be kept from anybody and anybody that didn't have a need to know.
One of the reasons the Bay of Pigs had failed was because we didn't have good intelligence that told us what the reaction of the Cuban people really would be when the invasion happened. Well, Bobby Kennedy was determined not to let that happen again. So there was a general effort throughout the summer and fall of 1963 to get people into Cuba by legitimate means, not by secret boats in the middle of the night, as the CIA was capable of doing, but these would be people who would go in legitimately, would be able to walk the streets, talk to people, because this was very important for Project Freedom.
Tom and Lamar's detailed study of recently declassified documents has revealed a secret plan, part of Project Freedom, that was hijacked by Kennedy's killers, enabling them to escape detection.
Beginning in September of 1963, several agencies of the U.S. government, at Bobby Kennedy's direction, began making contingency plans regarding Project Freedom. They were worried about what would happen if Castro found out about the plan and retaliated in some way.
And so Bobby was faced with a serious problem here. He had a plan that had a very good chance of actually unseating Castro. What if Castro found out about it? And what if Castro found out about it before it happened and launched a preemptive attack of some sort against the United States? Not a military attack, but some sort of a hit-and-run thing. What if he were, for example, to assassinate the U.S. ambassador to Panama or to Guatemala or something like this? And so Bobby had his advisors put together a series of contingency plans around this Cuban operation, these Cuban contingency plans by the State Department, the F.B.I., the C.I.A., the Defense Department, people involved in them like Alexander Haig and Joseph Califano, who put together this program that this is how we're going to respond if Castro does something against us, if he kills one of our people. And we want to very carefully control the release of information about the evidence. We want to control the evidence in a way that we can prevent inflammatory information from getting out that would cause the press to go nuts, that would cause the Republicans to use this as a political tool, that would cause Americans to demand an immediate invasion of Cuba that could lead to World War III. They had to have control of the information.
There were very low-level operatives and informants working for the CIA whose primary allegiance was to the mafia. And these people had been working with the mafia for much longer than they had been working with the CIA, and the mafia paid them many, many times what the CIA did. Those people not only told the mafia bosses like Trafficante and Marcello about Project Freedom, but they worked with the mafia in ways to use those plans to kill President Kennedy and use the secrecy surrounding Project Freedom to cover up the mafia's role in it.
The forces involved, I'm firmly convinced, were the same ones that were involved in the ongoing attempts to assassinate Fidel Castro. And I'm talking about the combination or the alliance between the CIA and the mafia to snuff Castro. And I think that what happened at Dallas was simply that having the personnel and teams assembled for assassination, having the wherewithal to do it, having the intelligence connections to cover it up, that they simply turned their guns on Kennedy, and that's where it all came from, out of that whole collaboration between the mob and the CIA and some of the Cuban exiles.
One of the more startling bits of evidence that Oswald was either a member of Project Freedom, part of the program, or that he had been manipulated in such a way that Bobby Kennedy was certain that he was, is found in an article written by a Pulitzer Prize-winning reporter who was in Washington, D.C. with one of the leaders of Project Freedom just hours after the assassination. And he received a telephone call from Bobby Kennedy just a few hours after Jack was killed. And Bobby's comment to him was, one of your guys did it. One of your guys just killed my brother. And this clearly demonstrates that Bobby's first response was that he recognized either Oswald's name or Oswald's position, and that he believed that Project Freedom had been breached. And this also shows us how and why the Cuba contingency plans were immediately invoked, why the government would go to the lengths that it went to violate state and federal law to seize John Kennedy's body from Dallas, take it to a federal facility in Bethesda. Immediately after the autopsy, the body was then delivered into the care of then Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Haig, later Secretary of State Alexander Haig. And Haig, of course, was one of the authors of one of the Cuba contingency plans. It's very clear from all the conversations we've had with the people who were close to Bobby at that time that he believed, at least in those early days, possibly weeks, that his program that he was responsible for, that he was running, had somehow been turned around or compromised and used to murder his brother, that he bore some personal level of responsibility for the death of his brother.